everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I thought it would be very interesting to discuss one of the comments I've had on one of my recent TikTok videos, which was basically talking about if FBA or FBM is better for starting Amazon with. The reason why I did it that way is because obviously when you ask the question of FBA or FBM, more than half the time I would say the answers you get are based on an Amazon seller that's been doing it for a while, whereas I thought it'd be really good just to tackle that specific topic, but solely when you are starting up. So for your first steps, which one is better? And this was a comment that I got, so let me read it to you. Don't forget, all the returns, customers can use it for 29 days and click return. Then Amazon in a second take that refund from your account. So you paid to send it FBA, you paid for the product, you have no control. Amazon favor the buyer, worst platform to sell. So let's dive into that statement a little bit more. We've all probably dealt with that. If you haven't dealt with that yet, then I imagine that you are relatively new to Amazon or you are incredibly lucky, and hopefully that luck keeps up. But ultimately, it is something that all of us have to deal with at one point or another, and we end up having to deal with it multiple times. It is just the way the cookie crumbles with Amazon. It doesn't matter if it's Amazon, it doesn't matter if it's eBay, Vinted, Etsy. All of these online platforms will have that kind of problem. And I know we'd absolutely love it if we won every time, but sometimes that genuinely isn't the case. Sometimes we do get unfair disputes where actually, we should win, but we don't. And that is where I understand this frustration. I'm sure plenty of you can relate to that as well. Now, does Amazon favor the buyer? Ultimately, I don't really think that's a question that that anyone can properly answer besides Amazon themselves, and it's not like they state who they favor. There can be a number of reasons why some might feel like Amazon favor the buyer, but that could be something that they could help with on their part. So something that I urge every seller to do is to keep a hold of every single invoice you get for your products. All order information, all things like that, admin stuff, we need to keep on top of it because it is actually important, especially when it comes to things like this. Typically when we need help for near enough anything on Amazon as a seller, one of the first things they'll ask for is, do you have an invoice? And if we can't produce even that simple essential bit of proof to Amazon, then we are sure to have lost the case before we've even gotten the ball rolling with starting our side of that dispute. So keeping everything like that is important, and it should be treated the same way as you would treat essential documents in your personal life. So for example, if you have a tenancy agreement, you wouldn't just shred it up the instant that you've got into your home. You keep these things. Your council tax bill, you'll keep that. All of us that sell on Amazon, or even if you have other businesses and you've got to report your earnings and so forth, you will keep receipts and so forth that relate to your business. Some of these things you can claim as an expense. So it's just part of the practice. We need to make sure that we are keeping these important things. That is the big thing here. And obviously if we don't have that, then we're going to lose no matter what. So that is something I'd say that we can do to help ourselves. But even with that, sometimes things do go unfairly. Sometimes returns are justified and make sense, like they're fair. So for example, if someone gets something, like if they've ordered an electronic device and it just straight up doesn't work at all, they've had it for under a day, it doesn't work, they've started that return, that makes sense, that's fair. We've all been in situations similar to that one. But if it's something like they've ordered something that they were planning to use for a particular event on a particular day, they're only ever going to use it the once and they're like, I don't need it anymore. Even though it's all fine, they decide to return it anyway. Now that is one that is a bit annoying, and I can understand the frustration there. I'm sure we've all dealt with something kind of like that. But if we look at the facts for exactly what they are, okay, It doesn't matter if it's Amazon, it doesn't matter if it's eBay, it doesn't matter if it's Vinted, it doesn't matter if it's Etsy. All of these online platforms will have that kind of problem. It doesn't matter which one you're on in that regard. However, in response to Amazon is the worst platform, I would strongly disagree with that point. Now, a bit like Club Bazaar, we need to join the crowd. We need to go where the most customers are. Amazon is the #1 digital marketplace in the world. Google it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It has been that way for the longest time. eBay as a runner-up, as second place. I think things like Vinted and Etsy are climbing their way up the ladder. I think even surpassing Walmart at this point. But anyway, Amazon is the #1. So many people shop there every single day, a crazy amount. So we go where the most customers are. And in terms of reselling, you know, for doing secondhand stuff, it can be a little bit faffy because, of course, we have to specify the condition. We have to be careful with our use conditions, our descriptions, and so forth. And obviously, eBay is known for that. And people come to Amazon because it's fast, it's convenient. Everything's on there. You can get loads of stuff new, and for reselling purposes, it's typically easier to deal with new stuff. Of course, used stuff is also great to sell, and it's not overly complicated either of these things. But new things, that's the great thing. Anyone can do Amazon. That's why it's one of the best platforms. Anyone can do it. Anyone can learn how to do it. Anyone can go to their local store and find stuff that they can flip for a profit. It's open to anyone. And that's the great thing about it. So I'd have to disagree that it is the worst one, but I do understand the frustration with disputes. However, my advice on that one, obviously, besides what I've already said, is it's just one of those things that we need to account for as part of the Amazon journey. We need to just accept that these things are going to happen, because these disputes and returns aren't the only thing that we'll be dealing with. There's lots of other things that we end up dealing with as well on that journey. And it's just something that we need to account for, which is why it's a sensible idea to factor these sorts of things into elements like your budget. And also, when we encounter these problems, it's wise to learn from them. Anything that we can take away from them, even if it's a little thing, that's always a plus, because then next time it is that little bit easier. And then in a financial sense, we should always factor in some room for, I guess you'd class it as a form of failure or loss. We need to factor that into our budget as well, which is another reason why it's very important that when we get money from Amazon, that we don't spend, that we are reinvesting back into ourselves, back into our business. So when we do experience these things, it isn't a total sucker punch to the gut, and we can recover from it because we've allowed room for it, in an emotional sense, in a financial sense, in a mental sense, and just by knowing that these things are going to happen, we're allowing for it and we are taking precautions. So keep reinvesting back into you, back into your business. These things will happen. It doesn't matter how far down the line you are. There isn't really a point where you're not going to get it. If you're doing 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, you will still end up with returns. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's the nature of the business. Amazon is still producing sellers that move from part-time to full-time all the time. Amazon is still producing people that make 4, 5, 6, 7 figures. It's still doing that, which is why it is still a great platform. Just these disputes, these returns are a part of it. We can file things like safety claims, so that's safe-t. We can file things like that for returns that we believe to be unjustified. Sometimes they are justified though, and it can be a bit anyway, but sometimes that's when we just need to accept, okay, the return's the return in this case. It sucks and we'd rather not have it, but we have those. But then the ones that are unjustified, we can file things like safety claims, and hopefully that helps. Again, invoices, accounting for it as part of our budget, and just knowing that's what's going to happen on our journey. eBay sellers can probably relate to that comment. Etsy sellers can relate to that comment. Vinted sellers can relate to that comment. And even looking outside the Amazon bubble, People that work as chefs will have their own array of problems. Actors have their own array of problems. All of these roles will have things to overcome, and that's just one of them for Amazon. Hopefully this has helped you feel a bit better, I guess, about returns and things like that. Obviously, it's never going to be the most ideal thing ever, but as long as we are accounting for it, then things will be okay. We need to keep that big picture in mind and strive for it, and we will find success. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.